They say a courtroom is supposed to be a place of order, of justice. But that morning in Washington, D.C., as the sun cut through the marble columns of the federal courthouse, all hell was about to break loose. Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe stood at the center of it all, not in her dress blues, not surrounded by fellow SEALs or saluting admirals. No. She stood in an orange jumpsuit, her wrists shackled in front of her, ankle cuffs clinking against the polished tile with every step. The first black female SEAL sniper in U.S. military history, now accused of treason. Just 24 hours earlier, she was scheduled to receive the Silver Star, one of the highest honors this country can give a soldier. Instead, she was yanked from the podium in front of thousands, mid-ceremony, with cameras rolling, medals still waiting on the table. As she was led into the courtroom, the air was electric with tension. Protesters shouted outside. News anchors shouted inside. Some called her a hero. Others called her a traitor. No one knew what to believe. And Ava? She didn't say a word. Not when the judge called her name. Not when the federal prosecutor listed the charges: breach of national security, disobedience, unauthorized action during a Black Ops mission in Colombia. Ava just stared straight ahead, her face unreadable, carved from stone. Then, it happened. The heavy oak doors of the courtroom slammed open, echoing like a cannon shot. Conversations died. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Every eye turned as a tall, imposing figure stepped through. Admiral Samuel Grant, head of Naval Special Warfare Command. The man who trained Ava. The man who vanished from the public eye 2 years ago. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to bring the room to silence. And what happened next? Let's just say, the story they tried to bury was about to erupt. Because Ava Monroe wasn't just any soldier. She was a witness. And she had the receipts. So, where are you watching from today? Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Before she was handcuffed in front of the entire world, Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe was a name only whispered in elite military circles. A ghost in the field. A shadow with a rifle. The kind of operator they sent in when everything else had failed. Not because she was flashy, but because she never missed. Born and raised in the south side of Atlanta, Ava was the daughter of a city sanitation worker and a church choir director. Her childhood wasn't easy, but it was full of discipline, structure, and a fierce belief in doing what's right, even when no one's watching. She ran track in high school, played varsity basketball, and still holds the Georgia state record for the 400-meter sprint. 15 years and counting. After turning down scholarships from Division I schools, she enlisted in the Navy at 18. No one expected her to even make it through BUD/S. Basic Underwater Demolition/SEAL training. Not as a woman. Not as a black woman. But Ava didn't just pass. She dominated. Outran half the class. Outshot most of them. Outlasted all but a handful. She wasn't there to make history. She was there to make a difference. Those who served beside her say Ava wasn't loud. She wasn't cocky. She was calm. Calculated. Cold when the mission required it. But never cruel. She carried a quiet kind of intensity that made even seasoned commanders take notice. When things went sideways, Ava didn't panic. She just adjusted her sights and made the shot. And yet, despite all her accolades, 5 Bronze Stars, 1 Silver Star, a Presidential Unit Citation, she rarely gave interviews. She never wrote a memoir. She never chased the spotlight. She believed real service didn't need an audience. And that's what makes today so hard to swallow. Because if Ava Monroe, the most disciplined, decorated SEAL sniper of her generation, is now accused of betraying her country, then something doesn't add up. And she's not talking. Not yet. By noon, Ava Monroe's arrest wasn't just news. It was the headline. Hero or traitor? Top Navy SEAL sniper arrested during medal ceremony. National security or government scandal? Within hours, her mugshot was everywhere. From Times Square billboards to Facebook memes. Talk show hosts were dissecting her life like they'd known her for years. Her face, calm, composed, and uncuffed in every photo until that morning, became the centerpiece of a storm America hadn't seen since Snowden. On one side, outrage. She put innocent lives at risk, snapped one national security analyst on a popular news network. No one is above the law, not even a war hero. Social media lit up with hashtags like hashtag Court Martial Monroe and hashtag No More SALs, with keyboard warriors demanding answers, demanding punishment. But on the other side, loyalty, passion, anger, not at Ava, but at those dragging her name through the mud. Veterans groups mobilized. Former teammates began posting cryptic messages online, not defending her directly, but hinting something wasn't right. "You don't know the half of it," one SEAL team member wrote. Another posted a photo from an unnamed jungle, tagged, "She saved 52 lives that day." The hashtag #FreeAva trended for 72 straight hours on X. Protesters lined up outside the courthouse in D.C., waving flags and homemade signs. One sign read, "If she's a traitor, what does that make the ones who ordered her silence?" Meanwhile, major news outlets scrambled for interviews. Anyone who trained with her, dated her, even sat near her in boot camp. Every tiny detail was picked apart, twisted, reshaped to fit the narrative that sold best. And then, someone leaked footage. A 15-second video, low resolution, grainy, but clearly showing Ava Monroe in jungle fatigues, rifle drawn, entering what looked like a civilian building. The video went viral instantly. No context, no audio, just a sniper breaching protocol. And the internet exploded. Lines were drawn. Opinions hardened. And in the middle of it all, Ava said nothing, because silence was still her deadliest weapon. Before the shackles, before the trial, before the headlines, there was Cypress Dawn. It started like most Black Ops do. No official record, no backup, no promises. Just coordinates, mission files, and a one-way ticket to a part of the world that didn't officially exist on maps. Deep in the borderlands between Colombia and Venezuela, a dense stretch of jungle hid something no satellite could catch. Local intel said it was a drug lab. CIA briefings called it a chemical weapons trafficking route. Ava Monroe's orders were simple. Observe, confirm, report. Do not engage. Her team, 4 SEALs, 1 drone operator, and a Colombian translator named Diego Ruiz, were dropped at 0300 hours. They hiked through heat thick as soup, mosquitoes the size of nickels, and humidity that soaked through body armor in minutes. But Ava was calm, focused like always. For 3 days they observed. And what they saw didn't match the mission file. No armed guards. No drug runners. No chemical weapons cache. Instead, they saw trucks pulling in and out, carrying civilians. Some limping, some blindfolded. Children. Women. Elderly men. People who clearly weren't combatants. And inside the compound, through the lens of Ava's scope, things got worse. Cells. Steel cages. Medical staff in full hazmat suits. Tables with restraints. Surveillance cameras mounted at every angle. It wasn't a drug lab. It wasn't a weapons factory. It was a black site. A human testing facility. Diego confirmed it. Some of the villagers taken there had never come back. Those who did returned sick, their skin burned or bruised, speaking of injections and hallucinations. One man's hair had turned white in 3 days. Ava had seen a lot of horrors in her life. But this was something else. She tried to radio command. No response. She switched to the encrypted backup line. Still nothing. Just static. But Ava knew comms weren't down. She knew when she was being ghosted. She'd seen this before, higher-ups pretending not to hear, waiting for a team to observe and withdraw, so plausible deniability stayed intact. But Ava Monroe wasn't built for that. She wasn't trained to walk away from innocent people in cages. So at 0432 hours, she made the call. "We go in. Quiet, fast, no casualties. We extract who we can. Ruiz, you take point with evac. We're not leaving anyone behind." Her team didn't question her. Not because they had to follow orders, but because they believed in her. What followed was 27 minutes of chaos. Silent takedowns. Doors breached. Civilians found strapped to gurneys. Machines humming with fluids Ava didn't recognize. Her body cam later showed her cradling a child, no older than 5, and whispering, "You're safe now." When they reached the helipad extraction zone, their evac bird was delayed. Black River PMC choppers, the same private contractor supporting the operation, were circling overhead. Then came the missiles. Explosions rained down on the compound behind them, not from an enemy, but from the same American contractors who were supposed to be on their side. They weren't trying to stop an attack. They were erasing evidence. Ava threw herself over two of the survivors as shrapnel tore through the tree line. Blood, fire, chaos. But somehow they made it out. 52 civilians rescued. 7 injured. 0 SEALs lost. And when they landed back at base, no debrief, no welcome, no press. Just a sealed folder placed on Ava's cot that read, Mission, Cypress Dawn, terminated. All files classified. No further inquiry. That was the moment Ava knew. She hadn't just broken orders. She had uncovered something no one was supposed to see. And someone, somewhere, was about to make sure she never spoke of it again. If there was one thing Ava Monroe valued above all else in the field, it was trust. Not rank. Not medals. Not politics. Just trust. And for nearly 4 years, she trusted Staff Sergeant Liam Carter with her life. He was sharp, reliable, and always the first to have her back. They'd trained together in San Diego, shared rations in Baghdad, and pulled each other out of fire in Mogadishu. Ava didn't just respect Liam, she considered him family. The kind of soldier you'd bet your last bullet on. So when things started to unravel after Cypress Dawn, Ava never even thought to question him. But maybe she should have. The signs were subtle. Liam stopped meeting her eyes. Started showing up late to briefings. He withdrew, not just from her, but from the whole team. He kept to himself, said he was tired, said he was just burned out. Ava figured he was just processing the mission. Until she saw the report. 1 week after the operation, an internal memo was circulated. Classified eyes only. Someone had flagged Ava's actions during Cypress Dawn as reckless, unauthorized, and potentially in violation of multiple national security protocols. Someone had filed that report anonymously. But the language, it was Liam's. She knew it like she knew his trigger squeeze. Deliberate, clipped, efficient. It wasn't just a report. It was a setup. The grainy, edited body cam footage that got leaked to the press? It came from his rig. Ava's encrypted field notes? Deleted, scrubbed clean before command ever saw them. And the drone footage? Misfiled under the wrong mission name. By someone who had admin-level clearance. Liam Carter didn't just betray her. He framed her. Later, Ava would learn why. He'd taken a private contract with Black River Consulting, the same PMC involved in the airstrike that destroyed the lab. They promised him a payout, full immunity, and a new life in Dubai, if he made sure the Cypress leak died quietly. And Ava? She was the loose end. In the world of covert ops, there's no such thing as friendship without motive. Ava had learned that the hard way. But betrayal doesn't break warriors. It fuels them. And Ava Monroe? She was just getting started. Back in the present, the courtroom felt less like a chamber of law, and more like a pressure cooker seconds from bursting. Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe stood motionless behind the defense table, still shackled, still silent, as the federal prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Nolan Briggs, paced the polished marble floor with the swagger of a man who'd already written the ending. He wore a $1,000 suit and a rehearsed look of righteous disappointment, like he couldn't believe he had to be the one to bring down a war hero. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, his voice echoing off the oak-paneled walls. "This isn't about medals. This isn't about emotion. This is about national security." He pointed to the screen behind him, which now displayed a freeze frame of Ava, jungle camo, rifle in hand, stepping through the door of a burning compound. "This is the moment," he continued, "when Lieutenant Commander Monroe disobeyed a direct order from Naval Command. She engaged without authorization. She compromised an operation and exposed classified intelligence to foreign nationals." Whispers rippled through the gallery. Some spectators nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. Ava didn't move. Her expression was unreadable. Her eyes locked forward like a sniper behind the scope. Briggs turned toward her, letting the silence stretch before he spoke again. "Lieutenant Commander, do you have anything to say for yourself?" No response. Not a blink. Not a twitch. Her court-appointed attorney, a visibly nervous man named Alan Kerr, leaned over to whisper something, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't there to play defense. She was there to wait. Because Ava knew something they didn't. And timing, like in any mission, was everything. Judge Harper, a stern woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for zero tolerance, finally cut through the noise. Ms. Monroe, I need an answer. How do you plead to the charges of insubordination, unauthorized engagement, and unlawful release of classified intel? The room went silent. Cameras clicked. Even the court stenographer hesitated, fingers hovering over the keys. And then, the courtroom doors creaked open again. Every head turned. A figure stepped inside, uniform crisp, medals gleaming, presence unmistakable. Admiral Samuel Grant. Retired. Decorated. Feared. Respected. Ava's old commanding officer. He didn't ask permission. He didn't wait for protocol. He walked straight down the aisle and addressed the bench. Your Honor, he said, his voice calm but cutting through the room like a blade, this court is about to prosecute the wrong person, for the right reasons. And unless you want blood on your hands, I suggest we pause this trial now. Gasps filled the room. And for the first time, Ava looked up. Judge Harper narrowed her eyes at the man now standing defiantly in the center of her courtroom. Admiral Grant, she said, her voice sharp, you're retired. You're not part of these proceedings. Unless you've been subpoenaed, I suggest. With respect, Your Honor, Admiral Samuel Grant cut in, I didn't come here to spectate. I came to stop a miscarriage of justice before this court turns a war hero into a scapegoat. The courtroom buzzed, murmurs growing louder before Harper banged the gavel once. Proceed carefully, Admiral. Grant nodded once, then turned to face the gallery, the prosecution, and finally, Ava. I trained Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe, he began. I approved her assignment to Operation Cypress Dawn. And I'm here to state, for the record, that she acted under direct threat to human life, and with authorization that never made it into the official record. Gasp. Reporters scribbled. The prosecutor stood frozen, eyes narrowing. What authorization? Judge Harper asked. Grant reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, then a small drive. This, he said, walking to the bench, is a signed internal directive from my office, marked top secret, timestamped 3 days before Cypress Dawn. It was submitted through the Special Operations Command chain but flagged and buried by an internal security node, a civilian contractor with ties to Black River Consulting. He placed the evidence on the bench. And this drive, he added, it contains encrypted comms between my office and Monroe's team, some of which confirm that a biological testing facility, not a weapons cache, was discovered, and that civilians, including minors, were being held and experimented on. Silence. The weight of those words seemed to knock the oxygen out of the room. You knew this? The judge asked quietly. Grant nodded, jaw tight. Not at first. But once the intel came in, I tried to escalate it. My messages were blocked. Ava never received the extraction clearance because someone intercepted the chain. They set her up to fail, so they could wipe the operation clean. He looked at the prosecutor. And if this court continues on its current path, you'll be helping them finish the job. The judge stared at the documents before her. And across the room, for the first time since the trial began, Ava Monroe exhaled, just once. The first crack in the silence had been made. And it was only the beginning. While the courtroom buzzed with tension, and the judge reviewed Admiral Grant's bombshell documents, another force was already in motion, working quietly, behind the scenes. Her name was Madison Riley, Deputy Investigator for the Department of Justice, National Security Division, 34 years old. Harvard Law, former Army JAG, sharp as a scalpel, with zero tolerance for political games. The kind of agent who didn't wear her badge on her belt, but carved her name into every investigation she touched. And in this case, she didn't wait to be assigned. She pulled the file herself. Madison had been watching Ava Monroe's case from the sidelines, quietly building her own timeline. Something about it never sat right. The speed of the indictment, the missing body cam footage, the redacted mission orders that looked more like Swiss cheese than actual intel. And then there was the name that kept surfacing, Black River Consulting, a private military contractor with ties to half a dozen off-book operations in Central and South America. Supposedly dissolved 5 years ago. Except their name kept showing up on travel manifests, equipment invoices, and most notably, in Cyprus Dawn's comms blackout log. Madison dug deeper. She found flight records that proved Ava's team had requested medical evac and been denied. She found internal memos warning senior officials not to open the investigation. And she found something else, too. A sealed incident report from 2 years prior, buried under a false project name, flagged with Ava Monroe's service number, and classified higher than Madison's clearance level. She smiled. When you hide something that deep, it means one thing. You're scared it'll be found. So Madison packed her tablet, her credentials, and a sealed subpoena request. Because if the courtroom was the stage, she was about to set the next scene. And for the first time in this entire mess, Ava Monroe was about to have someone fighting for her, from the inside. The courtroom never got the chance to reconvene. Before Judge Harper could rule on Admiral Grant's documents, before Madison Riley could file her motion, Ava Monroe disappeared. At least, that's what the official record would later say. In reality, she was transferred in the dead of night. No announcement, no paperwork, no escorting U.S. Marshals. Just a pair of unmarked SUVs, a flight manifest with no pilot name, and a sealed federal order from an agency most people didn't even know existed. Her destination? Orchid 7. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned weather station nestled deep in the Colorado Rockies. Miles from the nearest town, buried beneath a canopy of snow and pine. But underneath, it was something else entirely. Subterranean, reinforced, off-grid, no cell signal, no Wi-Fi, no access to legal counsel, just fluorescent lights and silence. Ava was stripped of her uniform, given a gray jumpsuit, no name, no rank, just a number, 7621B. The guards never spoke. Cameras followed her every move. Her meals were delivered through a slot in the wall. And every 12 hours, they pulled her into an interview room. Not with questions. With silence. Just stares. Just pressure. Psychological warfare 101. But Ava didn't break. They watched her for signs of fear. What they saw instead was calculation. Restraint. Patience. Because Ava wasn't planning to survive. She was planning to escape. Back in D.C., Admiral Grant had gone dark. Madison Riley was denied entry to her own agency's secure servers. Her DOJ badge was flagged for restricted activity. She got the message loud and clear. Stop digging. Or disappear too. So she did what good agents rarely do. She went rogue. She reached out to the only person who knew how to find Orchid 7. A former Navy cryptographer turned whistleblower named Eli Chen, now hiding under federal protection in a trailer park outside Tucson. It took him 2 hours to crack into the satellite overlay system. 4 more to locate Ava's biometric signature pinging from a biometric gate last updated 3 years ago. By morning, Madison had a team. Unofficial, unauthorized, but loyal to one thing only: truth. They moved fast. 2 Blackhawks. No insignia. No questions. One target. Extraction. At 0200 hours, Orchid 7's perimeter alarms lit up like Christmas. Smoke bombs dropped. Power was cut. Static flooded the surveillance room. By the time guards responded, Ava's cell was empty. The lock disabled, the cameras looped. She was already in the tunnels. Waiting. She knew this facility better than they thought, because Ava Monroe memorized every hallway, every duct, every blind corner. Escape wasn't a decision. It was a mission. By the time they reached her, she was already strapped into the evac rig, flying 200 feet above the trees. She didn't say a word, just handed Madison a flash drive. "What's on it?" Madison asked over the roar of the rotors. Ava didn't blink. Everything. Experiment logs. Authorizations. Names. Photos. Video. The entire Orchid program. Not just Cyprus. Madison nodded, staring at the metal in her hands like it weighed 100 pounds. And Ava? She leaned back, closed her eyes. exhaled. This time, not out of relief, but readiness. Because now she had proof. And someone was going to burn for it. You can fight a war with bullets. But if you want to bring down an empire, you do it with truth. Within 48 hours of her escape from Orchid 7, Ava Monroe's story went live. No press conference. No carefully worded statement from a legal team. Just a video, raw, direct, and unfiltered, uploaded to a dozen major platforms at once. The file was titled, Cyprus.Exposed. It started with a simple shot, Ava sitting in front of a bare wall, wearing a gray t-shirt, face still bruised from her captivity. But her voice? Calm. Steady. Measured. The same tone she'd used 100 times before missions that never made the news. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe," she began. "I served in the United States Navy for 16 years. I completed over 45 deployments. I followed orders. I trusted the chain of command. Until the day I found something I wasn't supposed to see, and refused to stay quiet. Then came the footage. Bodycam clips of prisoners strapped to gurneys. Thermal scans showing civilians locked in steel rooms. Documents bearing Department of Defense seals, CIA initials, and Black River Consulting signatures. Some of the files were time-stamped just weeks before Ava's mission in Colombia. But the most damning piece? A video. Grainy but clear. A child, no older than 6, screaming as masked men injected her with a glowing substance. Her name tag, Subject 31A. The video cut back to Ava. "We were told to observe. I chose to intervene. And for that, they erased me." The internet exploded. Within minutes, hashtag Cyprus Files and hashtag Justice for Ava were trending globally. Major networks dropped regular programming. Talk show hosts who once called her a traitor now demanded congressional hearings. Veteran groups, human rights organizations, and even former intelligence officers rallied online, demanding full transparency. Within 24 hours, a coalition of whistleblowers leaked additional evidence, confirming that Orchid 7 wasn't the only site. There were 11 more, across 5 countries. Each one tied to the same network, off-the-books Pentagon budgets, private military contractors, and classified bioweapons testing. Meanwhile, Madison Riley took the drive Ava gave her and handed it directly to a federal judge in a sealed motion. Her demand? Protective custody for all civilian victims. Subpoenas for every name listed in the program. And immediate suspension of all operations tied to Black River. The system had tried to bury Ava Monroe. But now, she had flipped the script. And the world was finally watching. The rotunda of the U.S. Capitol hadn't felt this tense in decades. Inside room 226 of the Rayburn House office building, the air was thick with anticipation. Journalists filled every inch of the press box. C-SPAN broadcasted live. Protesters chanted outside the gates. And seated at the witness table, under oath, under lights, under pressure, sat Lieutenant Commander Ava Monroe. She wore her full Navy dress blues. Not for optics. For the people she served, and the ones she couldn't save. Chairman William Knox, a seasoned congressman from Texas with a reputation for walking the party line, tapped the gavel once. This hearing of the House Select Committee on Intelligence Oversight will now come to order. He didn't look happy to be there. None of the committee members did. This wasn't part of the plan. But public pressure had turned a private scandal into a global embarrassment. The committee couldn't ignore it anymore. Not after Ava's video. Not after the Orchid 7 footage. Not after 3 U.S. allies cut intelligence-sharing ties over the allegations. Ava raised her right hand. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." And with that it began. She recounted everything. The Cyprus Dawn mission. The civilian cages. The blocked evac requests. The deleted comms. The airstrike by Black River operatives. The disappearance of her own teammates. And finally, her illegal detention. When asked why she disobeyed direct orders, Ava didn't hesitate. "Because the orders were wrong. They violated the Constitution I swore to defend." Some committee members shifted uncomfortably. Others stared down at the documents in front of them, faces pale. Then came the witnesses. A trauma surgeon from a Colombian clinic testified about treating the rescued civilians. A former Black River employee revealed financial records showing payouts to high-ranking defense officials. And then, Madison Riley delivered the flash drive. On screen, the committee saw names, photos, signatures. One of them belonged to Senator George Halston, a senior member of the Armed Services Committee. He didn't show up that day. When the hearing adjourned, the room was silent. Ava stood. The chairman's voice cracked slightly as he spoke. Lieutenant Commander Monroe, on behalf of this committee and the American people, thank you for your service and your courage. Outside, the crowd roared. She didn't smile. Not yet. Because telling the truth is only the first step. Getting justice, that was still a mission in progress. 3 weeks later, Ava Monroe walked through the halls of the Pentagon. Not in handcuffs. Not in silence. But with purpose. She wasn't there to make headlines. She wasn't even wearing her uniform. Just jeans, a worn leather jacket, and the same boots she wore the day she pulled 52 civilians out of hell. A young Navy officer spotted her and froze mid-step. "Ma'am," he said, standing at attention. Ava nodded gently. "At ease, sailor." He hesitated, then quietly said, "You made us proud." She didn't answer. She just kept walking. There was no parade waiting for her. No Medal of Honor ceremony rescheduled. In fact, when the Secretary of Defense offered to reinstate her rank and clear her record, Ava politely declined. "History can sort itself out," she told him. "I've got work to do." And she meant it. In the months that followed, Ava founded the Cypress Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to protecting whistleblowers in the military and intelligence community. She didn't want speeches. She wanted infrastructure, lawyers, safe houses, medical aid, mental health resources for those who'd seen too much and dared to speak up anyway. She kept it quiet, efficient, like any good mission. Back home in Atlanta, Ava's neighborhood held their own celebration. Nothing fancy, just a barbecue, folding chairs, and a banner strung between two power poles that read, "Welcome home, Ava." But it meant more than any ceremony ever could, because it was real. On a quiet Sunday morning, Ava stood alone at a small grave in Arlington National Cemetery. It belonged to Diego Ruiz, the translator from Cyprus Dawn who died protecting a group of children during the airstrike. Ava knelt down, placed a stone on the headstone, and whispered, "They know the truth now. You didn't die in vain." She stayed there a long time, because even after justice, some burdens stay heavy, and maybe that's where this story lands. Not with a perfect ending, not with everyone healed, but with something more honest. Because the truth? It's not always clean. Sometimes it costs your reputation. Sometimes it costs your peace. Sometimes it costs your whole life. But in a world that moves fast, that forgets even faster. People like Ava remind us of something we can't afford to lose. Integrity. The kind that doesn't change when no one's watching. The kind that says, do the right thing, even when it's the hardest possible choice. So what can we learn from Ava Monroe? You don't need a uniform to serve. You don't need rank to lead. And sometimes, being loyal to the truth means being disloyal to silence. If you see something wrong, speak. If you know someone's suffering, stand with them. If the world says, stay quiet, ask who benefits from your silence. Because the ones who change the world aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who refuse to back down when everything is stacked against them. People like Ava Monroe. People like you. If this story moved you, inspired you, or challenged you, don't just scroll past it. Like, share, comment, and make sure you're subscribed. Because next week, we're telling the story of another American hero they tried to erase, and the moment they decided enough was enough. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and never forget, the truth doesn't need permission. It just needs someone strong enough to carry it.